Hi there, this is Mr. Khan from 11 Plus and GCSE Coach. In this video, we're introducing algebra. So, what is algebra? In order for you to understand that, have a look at this example. How can the following be written as an equation that can be solved? So, I'm thinking of a number. When I add 5, I get the answer of 13. What is the number I'm thinking of? Now, instructions like these can be written using algebra. So, algebra uses letters to represent numbers that you don't know yet. So here's an example. So if I was to give you this question, a square plus 3 equals to 7, it could also be written as a similar example to the one above. I'm thinking of a number. When I add 3, I get the answer of 7. What's the number I'm thinking of? Well, it can't. That's basically obviously the answer to this question will be 4 because 4 plus 3 is 7. The point is not the answer to the question is how do you do algebra or what is algebra all about. Now, in primary school, sometimes you see questions like this: something plus 3 equals to 7. What is that something? Well, that is actually algebra, because when you get to secondary school, you stop using shapes, but instead you start using letters in place of the shapes. So, for example, the same question could be written as a plus 3 equals to 7 rather than a square plus 3 equals to 7. So it's easier to write. You don't have to worry about the shape, and everyone can have the same letter if it's the same question that everyone's working on. What number does A represent? And of course, it's the same question, so the answer in this case is 4 as well. Later on, we're going to learn how to solve these equations, but for time being, this is just an introduction to algebra. So algebra, to put it simply, uses letters instead of numbers that you don't know. Okay, so how can you write the question I asked earlier at the top? I'm thinking of a number. When I add 5, I get the answer of 13. Well, hopefully you got this already now. So it will be a letter, any letter you want it to be. In this case, we'll use n to differentiate from the previous question. N add 5 equals to 13. So that's how you would write the same instruction at the top using algebra rather than a long sentence. Hopefully that makes some sense. Now, algebra follows some rules. So these are simple rules that when you see them, you should recognize them and you should use them yourself. So the first rule is when you're multiplying two numbers or letters and a number in algebra, um, algebra doesn't use the times symbol. And one of the reasons is because the time symbol can be mistaken for the letter X, because we're using letters. So you don't use the time symbol. So for example, if you have the expression 5ab written somewhere, and that's obviously got letters instead of numbers, then that would imply is 5 times a times b. So when there's no symbol given, it can only be times. Every other symbol, add, take away, divide, must be written. But this one is not written for times. So for example, if you have a 3 with a shape after it, 3 lots of that shape, that means 3 times that shape. So hopefully that makes some sense. Likewise, if you have a fraction with a letter after 3 over 4y, it means 3 over 4 times y. So hopefully you understand that when you have two expressions or a number and a letter next to each other or a letter and a letter next to each other and there's no symbol in between, it can only be times and nothing else. Make sure you understand that and you remember it. Okay. The next rule is if you write it as a fraction, one number written over another, then it signifies division. So, for example, x over 4 means x divided by 4. I've mentioned that before in my video on fractions. Fractions are divisions. So, x over 4 would mean x divided by 4. So, using algebra, you would usually see it written as a fraction as opposed to this division symbol. So, keep that in mind as well. Just like normal numbers, algebraic expressions also use powers. So if you have like 2 to the power of 3 means 2 times 2 times 2, then in this case, x to the power of 3 would mean x times x times x. So remember this, algebra follows exactly the same rules as normal numbers in terms of the operations you can do with them. Even shapes, for example, if you have a shape to the power of 3 means that shape times this shape times that shape. Shape could represent anything. So the point is, you can use powers in algebra just like you use with normal numbers. Carrying on with the rules, brackets. Whenever you have a number outside a bracket and there's nothing between the number and the bracket, then again, just like I said earlier, that signifies multiplication. So this particular question that you see on the screen, 3 brackets a plus b, it means 3 lots of a plus b. A plus b is one item in a bracket, so 3 lots of that bracket basically. Now the quickest way to simplify this is to expand the bracket. What do I mean by expand the bracket? It means that number 3 outside will multiply everything in the bracket one by one. So the first thing you do is 3 times a. So remember, 3 times a will be 3a. So I should write the multiplication part first, then I'll simplify it. So 3 times a is the first impression. And we just said earlier, you don't show the times symbol in algebra, so you're going to write this as 3a. So I've multiplied 3 with the first number in the bracket, which is a, whatever a is worth. And the second number is positive 2. So 3 times positive 2 is what I'm going to do next. Is a plus there. So 3 times 2. So that means 3 times positive 2 is still positive 6. So I'm going to write plus 6. So the answer to this question, or expanded and simplified, will be 3a plus 6. That's one of the things you need to be able to do with these questions. Okay. When you have more than one of each term in a question, you can simplify them by collecting all the like terms. Now, when I say like terms, they mean all the terms which have the same letters next to them. So in this particular example, you've got 2m plus 4 plus 3m plus 3 take away m. Now, all the m's are like terms because they all have letters in them. So these are all like terms. And the numbers on their own are also like terms because they're just simple numbers. So what you do is you start collecting all the like terms. But one thing to keep in mind, the symbol before the term determines if it's positive or negative. So for example, 2m, we know it's positive because there's no negative before it. And every number in maths by default is positive unless it has a minus before it, then it becomes negative. If it doesn't have a minus before it, then you can't assume it's negative. Someone has to tell you, or you have to see it written somewhere. So for example, in the last term, negative m or take away m, that means m must be negative here. So anyway, we collect the like terms by collecting all the m's. So I've got 2m plus 3m. So now 2m plus 3m obviously is 5m. So 2 lots of m plus 3 lots of m is 5m. Then you're taking away 1m. So you've got 5m take away 1m. So 5m take away 1m is not 5. 5m take away 1m is actually 4m. So when I simplify this, I end up with this 4m. So 2m plus 3m is 5m, take away 1m. And that's another thing you will see written in algebra. When the letters on its own, there's always a 1 before it. And the reason you don't write 1, because you can clearly see it's 1m. So it's a common practice in algebra not to write the 1 before the letter when there's only one of them. If it's more than one, obviously, then you have to write that. For example, that's 2m and 3m and so on and so forth. So that's all the m's collected together. Now I need to move on to the numbers. So I've got positive 4 plus 3. Now you should all know what positive 4 plus 3 is. So you start on a number line, add 4, positive 4, add 3, you go right on the number line 3 places. That'll give me positive 7. So what I need to write is positive 7 after that. So this question here, simplified, collecting all the like terms, is 4m plus 7. And usually in algebra, you have to do the combinations of these two. So you'll have a longer bracket. You might have 2 sets of brackets that you have to expand. You'll end up with multiple terms with similar letters in them like this one. And you have to collect them like this at the end. So expanding brackets, collecting like terms and simplifying it. These are all very common questions in algebra. Hopefully that makes sense. Now have a look at these questions based on everything I just told you now. Think what you would do in these questions. Now we're solving them. So I'm going to use the examples on the left, and then you can do the questions on the right. Now, in order for you to solve equations, so this is an equation. The equation is something that can be solved. By solved, I mean you can work out the value of the unknown. And equations will always have an equal sign in them. So in this question, for example, you've got x take away 5 equals to 13. And the question is, what is x? Now, you probably already know what x is by, just doing it in your head. But I'm going to show you a method. When you're solving something, the letter you're trying to solve for, you always want to leave it by itself on the side it's on of the equal sign. There's the equal sign here. There's 2 sides to it, one on the left, one on the right. So this symbol here has 2 sides, left and right. Now, x is on the left side. I want to leave it on the left side. I want to leave it by itself. That will mean I'll know the value of it. If it's on itself equals to something on the other side, will give me the value. Now, to put it simply, if I want to solve it, I'll go x take away 5. I need to do the reverse of that. So if I've got a number, I'm taking away 5, the answer is 13. If I do the reverse process, you can do it 2 ways. One way is this. Start with the number x, you take away 5, and the answer is 13. To find x, you can work backwards. 13, when you do it backwards, you do everything in the reverse process, in the reverse order. So it's now 13. Instead of taking away 5, the opposite of taking away 5, or the inverse of it, is add 5. So you add 5. So 13 plus 5, that must mean x is equal to 18. So these two are equal. So that means x equals to 18. That's my answer to this question, x equals to 18. I've solved it. I worked out what x is. X is equal to 18. Hopefully that makes sense. That's one of the ways of doing it. Now, obviously, it could take a lot of space doing these arrows and stuff. So there must be a more quicker way of doing this. So, and there is. Let's have a look. Now, the way a quicker way of doing it is the following: the number that you have next to the x, try to get rid of it. But the key thing is, whatever you do to one side, you must do the same thing to the other side. And to get rid of the number, you must do the opposite, the inverse of it. So if I've got take away 5, I want to leave x by itself. The inverse of take away 5 is add 5. So add 5 to the left. Whatever you do to one side, you must do the same to the other side. I must add 5 to the right. And you end up with x and minus 5 plus 5. The reason I added 5, because minus 5 plus 5 equals to 0. They'll cancel each other out. But on the other side, when I simplify it, 13 plus 5 is 18, x equals to 18. So this is a lot quicker, takes less space, and the same answer as before, x equals to 18. Hopefully that makes sense. So the key thing is, when you're trying to solve it, leave the letter that you're trying to solve for on its own, and get rid of everything else on that side of the letter. Start one by one. Start with the one furthest away. There's only one number here, minus 5. I need to remove that, it's plus 5. That's furthest away from the x on the side of the x. Okay, so next question. Let's see if you can do this one before I go through this. So I've got a diamond plus 6 equals to 21, or a rhombus, one of those two. Diamond plus 6 equals to 21. I need to work out the value for the diamond. So okay, again, you could do the long way, or you could do it this way. I need to remove this plus 6. All right, the inverse of plus 6 is take away 6. I must do minus 6 from the left. I must do minus 6 from the right. So you must do the same thing to both sides, otherwise it changes the balance, it changes the equation, and then it's wrong. So now what you're left with is, sorry, if I just draw the diamond shape, you can probably see why this is not very efficient way of doing maths. If you start doing shapes, they can be wrong, they look different. So it's better to write letters rather than shapes. But the concept still remains. Diamond plus 6 equals 21. I took away 6 from both sides. Positive 6 take away 6 is 0, so there's no 6's left on the left-hand side. On the other side, 21 take away 6 is 15, so the diamond is worth 15. And you can always double check. So in this case, if I replace diamond with 15 here, 15 plus 6 is 21, and it works. And same with the question above it, we worked out x to be 18. 18 take away 5 is 13 indeed. So that could be your check to see if you got the right answer or not. Okay, so remember, key thing is you always do the inverse to get rid of the number which is on the side of the x, or the letter that you're trying to solve for. Now look at the next question. I've got 4x equals to 28. Remember what I said earlier, when you have a number next to a letter, the operation is always multiplication. In this case, it's 4 times x equals to 28. So I need to remove the 4 to leave x by itself. What's the inverse of times? It's divide. So I need to divide the left side by 4. Remember, in algebra, divide is done written as fractions usually. You can write the divide symbol and 4 as well, but I prefer this way. 4x divided by 4. I've divided the left side by 4. I must divide the right side by 4 as well. Now, 4 divided by 4 is 1. So the 4's cancel out. You're left with 1x, which is what we want. So this is 1x. Remember, when I say 1x, I don't need to write the 1 before. It's 1x. And 28 divided by 4 is 7. So in this case, the value of x is 7. And we can check that. 4x means 4 times x. So 4 times 7 is indeed 28. So we know this is the right answer. So these were the correct answers. Now, based on everything I've done so far, have a go at these questions, see what you make of them before you watch the video, see if you got them right. Hopefully you've had a go. So I've got in this question, x divided by 5 equals to 7. Remember, this question could be written as this: x over 5 equals to 7. Now I need to leave x by itself. It's being divided by 5 at the moment. So I need to do the inverse of divide 5, which is times 5. And you should remember how to time this. X over 5 is a fraction. You should remember how to times a number by a fraction. You put times here, I put 5 on the other side. It's 5 over 1. Basically, you can write 1 underneath it. I times the left side by 5. I must times the right side by 5 as well. And that will cancel. 5 will cancel out. So times 5, divide 5 are opposites. They'll cancel each other out. You end up with 1. And 1x means just x. And 7 times 5 is 35. So the answer to this, x must be 35. We can check that. 35 divided by 5 is indeed 7. Hopefully that made sense. Next question, you've got 3 lots of star equals to 12. That means 3 times the star equals to 12. So what's the inverse of times? It is divide. So you should have divided this side by 3. You must divide the right side by 3 as well then. So 3 goes into 3 1 whole times. So you end up with this star shape. Very awkward to draw. That's why it's better to have letters instead of shapes. So the star shape, one of those is equal to 12 divided by 3 is 4. And again, we can check that if star is 4, so 3 times 4 is 12 indeed, so it works. Now look at the next question. I have two steps. This is known as a two-step equation. So basically, you need to combine what we did for the first two questions here and what we did for the third question into one question. So how do we start? Again, the aim is to get x by itself. I've got the 3 there and I've got plus 4 on the side of the x. I need to get rid of both of them. Which one do you start with first? You always start with the one furthest away. The furthest away are the first to go. So from the on the side of the x, the furthest away is 4. 3 is right next to it, 4 is further away. Now, when I say furthest away, you might be thinking 19 is furthest away, but that's already on the other side. The other side doesn't matter. It's the side where the x is. We're trying to get by itself, the x. So I'll start with the 4 first. Just like before, to get rid of the 4, I'll do minus 4 because this is a plus 4. If it was a minus 4 in the question, I would have done plus 4 to get rid of it. You always do the opposite, the inverse. A minus 4 from the left, I must minus 4 from the right. So now I need to tidy up. So on the left side, I had 3x. I haven't done anything to the 3 yet, so that still stays. Plus 4, and I did a minus 4, they cancel each other out. 4 take away 4 is 0. On the other side, I've got 19 take away 4, which is 15. So now I've got 3x equals to 15. That's how far I've got, but I'm not finished yet because x is not alone. And this is similar to question 3 on the left side. Now the next step is this 3x means 3 times x. So the inverse of times is divide. So I divide the left by 3. I divide the right by 3. 3's cancel out. You end up with x equals to 15 divided by 3 is 5. And that's your answer. Now you can check that to see if it's right. So we've got 3x means 3 times x, which in this case we think x is 5. So 3 times 5 plus 4. Bid mass, you always do multiplication first. 3 times 5 is 15 plus 4 is indeed 19. So we know the x value of 5 is correct. So that's the correct answer. And that was also correct. And so was that. Hopefully you've understood that and you got these questions right. Couple of more things. Substitution. Sometimes you're given an expression, so notice there hasn't got an equal sign here. So it's not an equation, it can't be solved. But what you can do is if it's an expression and they've told you what the letter is worth, like in this case, a is worth 4, you can actually simplify it. So a plus 5, what is the value of that if a was 4? All you're doing is substituting the value of the 4 in place of value of a in place of a. Just like a substitution in a sports game somewhere, you take one player off, you put another player in his place. That's what you're doing. You're taking a off and you put in the value of a in its place. So if a is worth 4, I'll rewrite this question as 4 plus 5. Obviously 4 plus 5 is 9. So the value of this expression is 9. Next question, let's stick to the same value of a as being 4. So 2a plus 3, remember 2a means 2 times a, so that would be 2 times 4, add 3. 2 times 4 is 8, add 3 is equal to 11. So the value of this expression is 11. Hopefully you got that, you understand it. Now, sometimes you're given a situation or a scenario and you have to write down the algebra expression from it and then go ahead and use it to do whatever the question is asking for. So let's have a look at this question. The cost of hiring a carpet cleaner is £5 per day plus a fixed one-off charge of £20. Write an expression for hiring the machine for D number of days. That means £5 per day. So if it's 1 day, it'd be 1 lots of 5. If it's 2 days, it'd be 2 lots of 5. If it's 3 days, it's 3 lots of 5. If 4 days, 4 lots of 5. 10 days, 10 lots of 5. And D days will be D lots of 5. And that's the key thing to understand. They haven't told us what day we write an expression. That means for any number of days. So in this case, if £5 is for 1 day, are times by the number of days. How many days are we timesing it by? They call the number of days as the letter D. So that means it's 5 times the number of days, which is 5D. And then plus a one-off charge of £20. The £20 will be given regardless of how many days you use. So that means plus 20. And that's an expression for this scenario given. Remember, you don't use the time symbol in algebra, so you simplify it further by doing 5D plus 20, and that's the answer to this question. Or that's the expression written for this scenario given, so it's 5D plus 20. Now, the questions like these will carry on. They'll have a second part, like this one here. It will say, find the cost of hiring the machine if Gemma hires it for 3 days. Now, you might have seen this written as 5D plus 20 is correct, but they might write as equal to the cost, equals to C, equals to C. So what you're saying is find the cost. Cost is equal to 5D plus 20. Now the question says, find the cost of hiring the machine if Gemma hires it for 3 days. I'm going to write it as cost is equal to 5D plus 20. I need to find the cost if it's for 3 days. So remember, D is the number of days. You replace 3 with days. So it's still a substitution question. You replace it, D with the letter, with the number of days, which is 3 in this case. It'll be 5 times 3. 5D means 5 times D. So 5 times 3 plus 20. Bid mass again, multiplication first. 5 3s are 15 plus 20. And the answer will be £35. So the answer for the cost of hiring this carpet cleaner for 3 days will be £35. Hopefully that made sense and you understood it. Thank you for watching.